Thank you, Finn. So, so I made my transition from client services world to startup world about a year and a half ago. I spent about 10 years at client services, 4 years, last year I worked here at IDEO, and I had the honor to work together with a lot of the people here in this room. I wanted to share some of my learnings from that journey, and I would specifically want to talk about impact and the impact that designers can have. I think that a lot of us became designers because we thought that it would be a tool to have positive impact in the world and change things. It's been really encouraging to see in the last 10 years or so that this idea has really gotten a lot of traction within business, within government, within nonprofits, and you can even see design being applied in terms of regions and countries. You also see within digital product development that this has also gotten attention. You have like larger success stories like Apple and Apple and Apple. And then you have other companies like Facebook and Square and Twitter that are really showing that they can leverage design. But unfortunately, this is still the exception to the rule. I think that in many senses, if you look at the average, the kind of how design is used within startups is we're still in early days and we have a long time to go. I noticed that when I was meeting different companies, different startups and different founders, I find that every single one of them told me that design is going to be critical to what we do. And I thought, great, why? And they were a little struck because it was like, well, it was almost like it was the fashionable thing to say. So I think that you have to look for, okay, which companies are actually truly going to leverage you as a designer in a good way in their organization. So there's a few reasons why I think we still have a long way to go. One is that, and the reason why designers are not necessarily getting the impact they could have within startups. One is that I have the feeling that there hasn't been many designer founders in the startup community for a long time, and there hasn't been a lot of strong design voice. And this means that when a company is founded, a lot of energy is spent finding talent within engineering and business and maybe product management. But when it comes to design, it's quite often that the startup tends to gravitate towards maybe a junior designer however talented they are, however talented the designer is, might not have the tools or the experience to have a bigger impact within their organization. This is slightly connected to a problem we see a lot in New York, that the default route for a designer is to go the agency route. And what happens in the agency route is that they tend to swallow a lot of people, which means that the people who have the designers who have the quality to have large impact within organizations, they quickly race within the ranks within the agency world, and they sort of get disconnected from craft pretty early in their careers. This is a challenge because as startups, we need to make stuff, and we need people who can both think strategically, but also create stuff that hits the market. So there's a few things. What can you as a designer do to make sure that you get more impact? So I think the first steps is you want to find someone who loves you. So a company that actually is design friendly. Where everyone wants someone to love, right? And it's really hard to find these companies though, and I thought I'd share a little of my thoughts of what you should be looking for. So one thing you could be trying is ask the company that you're talking to, be specific about why design is important to them. So when I first met with Art.sy, they had a very concrete story about why design was important. They said that the art world is a very brand-sensitive place, and we think that design is going to be an important tool to create our brand. They also said that the people that we're trying to partner with and come on board and do this journey with us, they have people within their organizations that spent their entire lifetime thinking about, or their entire career thinking about how art should be presented in a physical space. And we should be providing the same kind of care and detail when we think about how it's presented in a digital case. So just the fact that they thought about it made me really confident that they would actually appreciate and like give room for the design process. The second thing to kind of find is what are their perception of what design can do with their organization. And I think that design can do a lot of different things. And here's a framework that I like to use that's roughly from like the practical to the very strategic. And you can use your own framework, it doesn't really matter. But look at where is this company in their maturity of what they're looking for. So I think that many people see design as problem solving, but very few people see like design as a tool to actually find opportunities, to figure out which problems to solve in the first place. The third thing I would look out for is if neither of these happen, so you might be speaking to an organization and you don't get a sense that there might not be that articulate about design. Is everything lost? Does that mean that you shouldn't pursue that path? That's not necessarily. So if they're not particularly experienced working with designers, what I suggest is you actually look for two things. You look for a willingness to have a long perspective, and you look for user empathy. Because if they're actually building their companies on like those two things, then it's a good ground for you to actually build something nice together, even if they haven't like really know exactly how they're doing it. Sorry. There we go. Okay, so let's say that you found a company that you actually, where you feel, okay, this is reasonably friendly for me as a designer. What's the next step? So you want to try to maximize your impact and see like how can you grow your impact within the company. And there's one thing I want to say about that, and that's actually having a little grand delusion might be a good thing. So it's very easy to see your role as being responsible for the quality of the user experience within the company. And this goes to a little bit what Joe was talking about. But if you position yourself in this way and become kind of like a protector of the user experience, you can maybe hear some people say sometimes that it's like, oh, my role is to be the user advocate and I fight for the user. I think that's totally pointless. Because if you run into these conversations, you haven't positioned yourself properly in the first place. So you don't actually want that conversation to even happen. So instead, this is like a very slight, like practically, in terms of like how you organize yourself, it doesn't mean that much. But for you as an individual contributor, if you change your mindset from being like operating in this little circle to actually taking responsibility for the success of the company, then you enter the conversation at a different level. So you're going from like, I'm responsible for the quality of the user experience to the success of the company. And if you want to be a little bit more courageous, you even do this. You say that, well, what I'm actually focusing on is to achieve the same mission as the company is trying to achieve. So if my mission is, let's say, to make all the world's art accessible to anyone with an internet connection, aligning myself with that goal and evaluating my priorities changes how I think about things, and it changes how I run projects and how I make things happen. And it also allows me to actually perform a certain amount of leadership within the company and sort of use design to lead the way for what we should be doing next. So the third suggestion I have is like, don't let data push you around. So I don't know if you've been in this situation where it's like, oh, this is going to be hard because I have to, so I don't know how to hold this. So have you ever been in this situation where you're like, oh yeah, thank you. So you've crafted this design in the midst of your little studio, right? This feels very awkward. And you created this beautiful thing that you're very proud of. And you hold it in your arms, and you can sort of, it's beautiful. It's a beautiful baby bird. And you can feel its heart beating. And you take a step, and you go and show your colleagues, and you want to release this beautiful baby bird into the world. And then this happens. Oh, no sound! No sound! We need a sound. So I don't know about you, but that has totally happened to me. And what I find is that it's rarely actually a problem it's actually rarely a problem that the design solution is wrong and it doesn't live up to the goals that you actually set up. The most common scenario is that the perception of the goals is different. The perception of the goals are different because everyone is prioritizing different input methods. So I put that there. So we all have biases. You can see if you're shaping a product or shaping a design, here are some input methods you can use, and you should be aware that every person comes with their perspective and they're biased. I'm biased and my colleagues are biased, and we meet. What you want to try to do is like work with yourself to reduce the amount of or make your more even in terms of how you prioritize. So being like taking the input method that you find most uncomfortable and actually making that your friend. So if you're really good at like qualitative user studies, which after 4 years at IDEO, hopefully you are, and you're not very strong at analytics, you have to make sure that like you spend your time to build up that muscle. Because if you can be that point where you actually like you value all these input methods and you can see the pros and cons of them, and you can be the point of synthesis. So it's actually taking this all in account, you actually build up your judgment in a very high, like you build your judgment very much. And the second thing is that you want to learn to be articulate about how these different input methods should be balanced and how they should be balanced with intuition. So being able to like compare analytics with the impacts that a decision will have for long-time user engagement, or what kind of implication it will have for a brand, it's very hard to define, because it's like you're putting something concrete like compared to something that's not concrete at all. And like creating that tool set for discussing that is really important within the company. So that's 3 ways you can go about doing it. And I think like themes there is that like to create like a little bit about changing the self-perception about what you're doing within the organization, and like taking a step back. So if you look at your to-do list for Monday and you try to evaluate it, not in terms of like, and you try to evaluate it in line with the goals of the company or what you're trying to achieve on a more higher level, you'll have higher impact. And also I would suggest that next time you do a project, try to take an input method that you're not very comfortable with and integrate it into what you're doing. So if you want to continue your conversation, I'm there. And if you want to check out Art.sy, You have a link there with like a bunch of invites. We're still in private beta, so check it out. Cool.